Council members Erickson,
Here.
Larson,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
Valento,
Here.
Mayor Roger, I'm sorry, Mayor Roberts. I was gonna say Mayor Bain, Mayor Roberts.
Here. All right, if Kim, please stand for the pledge. Turn the same way. All right, council, we have a agenda in front of us. Is anyone willing to make a motion to approve the agenda?
Also move.
Go ahead, sir.
Move approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Mayor, just to note that it is an amended agenda from what was sent out, if we could.
Thank you. And that was, so we're adding item 7E to the agenda.
Correct.
So. Any other motion?
No, so noted.
Okay, all right. Great. Open forum. This is an
You
opportunity.
approve it though.
Oh, did we not approve?
Not yet.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Open forum, this is an opportunity for any citizen to speak to any city concerns. Please limit it to about 3 minutes if possible. And do we have anyone that is interested in speaking this evening?
There's no one signed up, Mayor.
All right. Item 6, consent agenda. I would like to make a motion that we approve consent agenda A through H and then J through I, and pulling item 6I for for discussion.
Second.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just correct you. I think you said A through H and J through I, but I think you meant J through L.
J through L, yes. Thanks for the correction. And there, we have a motion? For the second?
Still second it, yep.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. So would we then add that first item to the end of the agenda, or that I to the beginning?
Mr. Mayor, you can handle it now if you like.
All right. As long as it was consent, let's do that. So I'm just asking that we pull that North Shore Circle Park Restoration Agreement. Just some more conversation. We have new council. And just if someone from staff could kind of go through maybe the timeline of that, and if we have any additional questions. I guess what I'm trying to avoid is a situation we had, although it's not right away at City Park, where maybe the neighborhood wasn't informed or not knowledgeable about this, and then all of a sudden we have a problem and we start making small depressions like we did on North Shore. So, Dave, would that be?
Yep.
Okay.
So as you probably know, North Shore Circle was reconstructed, was it 2022? 2022, redid all the underground sewer work and repaved the road. Doing all that work triggered water quality, or triggered watershed treatment of water. At that point in time, there was 2 parklands, North Shore Circle Park East and North Shore Circle Park West, that were up for discussion. It got reviewed by the Parks Commission, and they had chose to use the Westerly Park for the BMP. So after the project, it was kind of unsightly. It was long grass and a kind of a pond in there, and not very easy to mow, and got a number of complaints from residents out there that it just didn't look very nice. So in working with the city staff and working with the watershed, they obtained a grant to do shoreline restoration, add some trees, add plants, flowers. The city's gonna add a trail to the lake and a bench. So that's what this project is, to kind of beautify the stormwater project that was put in as part of that road project. So the water quality project was already there. We're not taking more, we're just trying to enhance it to make it look a little nicer than how it was left after that project. This agreement also says that the watershed are the ones responsible for the maintenance long-term to maintain all their plantings and that shoreline for a minimum of 10 years, and then auto-renew every 5 years after that. The city would just be responsible for maintaining that gravel path and the bench, which is minimal maintenance long-term.
Anyone have any questions on that?
Yeah, what's their history of maintaining that type of property? If they're gonna be responsible for it for the next 10 years, what is their expectations on them as far as what that looks like?
Maintaining the plantings, yes, we would still mow the actual upland grass, so there's, off the street, there's still mowable grass, and the pond is designed to be dry unless it rains, so we'd continue to mow that. They would maintain, if you see in your consent agenda, their renderings of what their enhancements are, that's what they would be responsible to maintain. We would mow the rest of the grass and then maintain that trail and bench.
It looked like in the renderings that the trail was going all the way down to the lake, is that correct?
Excuse me, what
Is
was
the
it?
trail going all the way down to the lake?
It's going, the shoreline has like a bank to it, right, so it's going to the shoreline, yep. They just can't do that as part of their grant because that's not considered water quality, so it's pulled out as an alternate, and then we'll just add that amenity in.
So is there, what's the intent with that trail? Is there gonna be like kayak tie-ups or anything like that, a fishing pier at some point down the road?
The intent is to have it as like a passive access. We didn't want it big enough where it'd be appealing for somebody to try to back their trailer down there, but also wide enough for if somebody in the neighborhood or somebody close by wanted to park there and walk a kayak or canoe down. There isn't long-term plans for fishing. I don't know how deep that gets out there. You might have to put a pretty long dock out there for fishing, but it's more designed for just, paddle boards or canoes or kayaks. But we had first designed it as 8 to 10 feet long, and I think that would be too appealing for somebody to back their jet ski trailer down there, so we're trying to shrink that up just enough to kind of make it look more like a trail. It'll be signed to as well, non-motorized vehicles, and so.
That's all.
So I'm glad to hear that. So just to follow up with that question, so you said that the previous park commission did look at this when it was, and decided and was aware of what was going on and made that determination of where the,
Yep.
Okay.
The first option actually was the east one. Bolton Mink had put a walking trail through there with some stormwater quality things and like a pollinator garden and all that. And the two neighbors that were on the east and west side of that park came and spoke out pretty heavily against having that there. So then they shifted to this one that was just basically an empty lot.
great. That makes me feel better that there was that conversation back then. So is anyone willing to make a motion on this?
I have a question.
Sorry.
That's right. Has this already been sent out to bid?
Nope.
Okay. So the numbers that I've seen are just kind of rough estimates.
Yep, they kind of need this agreement with the city before they can put it out to bid, because if there is no agreement to allow them onto public land and to do this work, then they really don't have a project to do. So it kind of this has to happen first before they can put it out to bid. I believe all the plans are complete, they're just kind of waiting on this agreement.
And then, so to clarify, so the city's portion would just be that trail and the bench?
Yep, and that'll come back to you. It's gonna be bid as an alternate. So when that bid comes back, I will bring that back to you and say, this is how much that part of the project would be. Is the council fine, is the city fine with paying for that chunk of it? So it's not bid as a full project, it's separated out as an alternate, just to know what that cost is specifically for us.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, anyone interested in making a motion on this?
I'll make a motion to approve the North Shore Circle Park Shoreline Restoration Agreement.
We have a second?
I'll second it, sir.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Great. Number 7, this is our first regular agenda item, Ordinance 749 Multifamily Zoning Amendment, and Abby's going to walk us through this.
Thank you, Mayor Roberts, members of the council. Currently, the city's zoning code's multiple family residential district indicates the multiple family residential district has a maximum density of 15 units per acre. We received a zoning ordinance text amendment from James McKinnon to change that to have a maximum density of 20 units per acre. And this is consistent with the comprehensive plan, which guides those multifamily future land use areas for 15 to 20 units per acre. So in addition to Mr. McKinnon's request, staff is also proposing that we kind of button up those minimum and maximum densities of 15 to 20 units per acre in the multifamily residential district. When the Planning Commission did take a look at this in February, they did vote 4-0 to recommend approval to your body for the ordinance amendment. Just for reference to the City Council, we always look to see for our text amendments that they're consistent with the comprehensive plan, there's no conflicts with the zoning code, and that there's a general public benefit to this request. And overall, when we can tie our zoning code back to our comp plan, which is really the guidance for our community, that's probably the best interest of the public. Additionally, for those that might not know, if there ever became a land use matter where there was a proposal in the multifamily district right now, but it was greater than 15 units per acre, the comp plan prevails. So the comp plan guidance from up to 20 units per acre would be the rule of law. So therefore, this is not only consistent with the comp plan, it's the benefit of fixing the zoning code. Those are all things that we want to do for the general benefit of the public. So before you tonight is ordinance number 749, which would change that a minimum density of 15 units per acre and a maximum density of 20 units per acre. And staff recommends you open the public hearing, take public comment, close the hearing, and then discuss. And after all discussion, staff recommends you move to adopt ordinance number 749, amending all of those words for section 153. 073 multifamily residential district. My Roman numerals are not great. It's just not my strong suit. Any questions?
Just one question.
Yep.
We've been operating with a, code that says up to 15, and now we're putting a minimum on that. Does that hurt us in any way? I mean, is there, versus just saying, hey, it's got to be up to 20 or it can be up to 20?
We're just making that minimum 15, maximum 20 for the consistency with the comp plan. I don't believe that this district would allow for single family or even those attached unit designs that would have densities. It's really designed for apartment structures.
Right, I'm gonna open a public hearing at 7:13. Is there anyone here to speak on amendment 749? Keep it open for just a couple more moments. Anyone interested in speaking on this amendment? Okay, 7:14, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council for discussion. Any additional questions or thoughts, or we have two veteran, or one real veteran planning commission member and one with a couple of years, so suspect if you guys are comfortable with it, and it was a 4-0.
We have discussed it quite a bit at length on the planning commission and stuff before. I think it's pretty solid.
I think it's important to make it more consistent. So if there's no objections, I would make a motion to adopt the ordinance number 749, amending Title 15, Land Usage, Chapter 153, Section 153.073, Multifamily Residential District, Section A, Purpose.
I'll second.
Great. First and a second, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are 7B, North Shore Trail Design Considerations, and Ryan?
All right, Mayor, City Council, we'll just kind of recap last city council meeting on some items that we had the understanding that you might have been on consensus on, and then we'll go through some of those alternatives and hopefully have some final direction after tonight. So based on the February 24th meeting, here's some bullet points outlined. This kind of mimics, this presentation will mimic my memo in the council meeting agenda. So if you did read that, it's a lot of the same information here. So It was our understanding that we were gonna remove all scope of work from the project, North Shore Trail from Greenway Avenue to 235th. Discuss alternative scopes of work on North Shore Trail from 235th, but general consensus was that we were gonna include the original scope of work from 235th to 230, or Highway 97, which included the full pavement replacements. And then tonight, we would bring back additional design considerations for the city council and anticipated project schedule as presented. We still would assume that we're following that schedule moving forward. So tonight's, the additional design considerations we'll talk about: lane width considerations, lane striping consideration, solar-powered speed limit sign considerations. On reference guides that we look at when we are designing roadways or looking at safety features, here's a list of what we generally would look at. Some of them we would use depending on money source. Some of them we would use as a guide. Some of them are required depending on what you're doing. So just going through those reference standard summary and high level, I mean, there's pages, right, that go into this. This is really what we really need to take from that. So if we were using state aid dollars, you know, North Shore Trail is a state aid route, but we're not using state aid dollars, so we don't have to conform to their requirements, but we are still doing the same scope of work. We're reclaiming it. Minimum lane width would have to be 10 feet. Minimum shoulder width would be 2-foot gravel. Bike facilities, they recommend following Minnesota Bicycle Facility Design Manual. If we were fully reconstructing it, like we do plan on with the North Shore Drive portion from Highway 61 to Greenway, these are the minimum standards we're gonna have to meet on that design when you go into full reconstruction, which would require a lane width of minimum of 11 feet, minimum shoulder width 6-foot gravel, and still follow the same bicycle facility design manual. Minnesota Bicycle Facility Design Manual, minimum 4-foot paved shoulders width, 6 foot preferred. Ideally provide paved shoulders on both sides of the streets. MnDOT paved shoulder info sheets, prioritize paved shoulders on both sides of the streets. Narrow paved shoulders is better than no paved shoulders. MnDOT Local Road Research Board, best practices for pedestrian and bicycle safety, provide paved shoulders on both sides of the two-way roads to discourage wrong-way riding, biking. AASHTO Bike Guide, recommend minimum 4 foot paved shoulders, 5 foot if there's a guardrail or a vertical obstacle that's close. So take for instance, if I got something there, I'm not gonna be right up to it, right? I'm gonna probably be a foot off. So that's what that references throughout the presentation. FHWA, Federal Highway Administration Bikeway Selection Guide, preferred paved shoulders width for rural roadways based on speed limit and traffic volume, 5 to 8 feet for North Shore based on the traffic that we have there. Allows for minimum 3-foot paved shoulders, 5 foot of guardrail or other vertical obstructions or presence. So some of the typical,
Just a quick question. What's the current width of the lanes out there?
the current road is 30 feet width at the most on average. There's some pinch points throughout this corridor. Even with the new pavements, we're not gonna get a full 30 feet in width in some of the areas where some of the driveways were built pretty close up to the roadway or that area. Once you go past the pizza place and they got that hill on that north side of the road, there's just nowhere to put the road any wider. So right now it's the 30 foot, 12-foot lanes, and would that make 3-foot shoulders at best case scenario? So,
All right, thank you.
well, that leads into the slide. Good lead in. So this is the existing section that's out there, ideally out there today. It's got the 12-foot striped lanes, 3-foot shoulders. So we just kind of did some pros and cons to each typical section. Obviously, there's other opinions that might have an additional pro or a con, and that's certainly something we can bring up and talk about. This proposed matches the existing crown. That means the center of the road would be the high points, and it would equally shed water both directions, and 2.5% is our city standard. New pavements, it's important to have crown to get that snow and ice off the road and not be sitting on your pavement. So this matches the existing layouts. Uniform width allows bikes and peds on either side of the road. 12-foot lane allows for more space to pass around bikes and peds on the shoulder. Cons, obviously, we've heard some residents want wider shoulders or a trail, less than minimum standard shoulder width for bikes and peds. Vehicle speeding concerns remain with the 12-inch lane, and what I mean by that's when you allow a driver just behavior-wise a little more space to maneuver, they don't feel crowded or pinched or really think more about what's going down the corridor as they're traveling, especially as their speeds get high. So that's kind of a traffic calming engineering thing that is done. Thicker lines, squeeze them in, then they feel a little pinched a little bit, and mentally then they're thinking and having to slow down a little. Now, it doesn't work for everybody, but that's where you see like a lot of traffic calming techniques, whether it's with striping or even concrete curb and gutter in certain portions of roadways, they'll squeeze in certain areas.
Just, Mr. Mayor, if I might interrupt, just 12-foot lane, just so everyone's aware, is sort of the standard, right? I mean, 90% of the lanes out there that are, striped on roadways are 12-foot lanes. So just keep that in context, that is sort of the quote-unquote normal lane width.
On higher volume roads, your turn lane in the center would get wider than 12-foot sometimes too. So there's all design considerations based on traffic and type of road. Option 2, restripe the road down to 11-foot lanes, which would provide you a 4-foot shoulder. Here we would still maintain the center crown. We'd gain 1 foot on each side of the shoulder, meets minimum 4-foot shoulder width standards. Uniform shoulder width allows bikes and peds on either side of the road, and 11-foot lane could potentially slow traffic down. Cons, potentially complaints with narrow lanes, less than the preferred 5-foot shoulder width. So if you look at the 2 railings you guys got on the sides where you walk up and down from your dais there, that's about 4 feet. So if you stand in between, that's what it would feel like out on the road. So option 3, go down to a 10-foot lane, 5-foot paved shoulders. Existing crown here would stay the same, 2 foot wider on each side of the roads. You get that traffic calming effect, meets the shoulder widths allowed by bikes and peds on either side. Potential complaints about how narrow this road is. This would provide some challenges in some locations for garbage trucks, buses, and larger any delivery trucks that do drive down that corridor. Then to stay within that lane, uniformly through wherever they're driving. And if you do have somebody close biking or running, if a car has to swerve 1 foot over to feel comfortable, you potentially are in oncoming traffic too. So the skinnier the lane gets, that's some of the things to think about from a driver's behavior. Option 4, now we're looking at offsetting the crown of the road, which would require additional shaping, moving the material around with a grader after it's reclaimed in place to shift all that material over. Some of it might be lost in their bid somewhere, but if you're actually just calculating, a few more cost of the lineal foot of the project, this potentially could be around $70,000 for this shifting it 1 foot with the amount of material that if you calced it out, but you're gonna be out there grading it anyways, so, somebody might bid something else a little different and you don't actually see a price increase once you start playing around with the crown, just how they bid the project, because it's gonna be a lineal foot bid or a unit thing they'll have to do in the project regardless to shape it and we'll compact it before we pave it. But here you shift the road 1 foot offsets, you then have your 11-foot lanes, you can obtain 3 foot on one side, 5 foot on another. Notice though that one side of the road is gonna have a flatter crown. So over time, that side is probably going to start developing more pavement issues than the other side because just the crown, you're gonna get the water off the other side a lot better. So, and as the crown flattens out over time, that's where, a lot of your roads start to degrade faster and that crown starts sinking just over time. A road starts moving around, settling down and getting flatter, and then you get the water being held on it versus getting it off. So that's some of the things to think about. Potentially there's some plowing issues when you got offset crown, but here's some of the things that would go into a 1 foot offset. Also looked at one roadway if you had a 2 foot offsets and went down to a 2 foot paved shoulder on one side and 6 foot on the other and maintain the 11 foot lanes. Obviously you get that one side that exceeds the 5 feet. You get a flatter slope, now you're less than 2%, and you know, just in constructability of the work out there, unfortunately, sometimes you're not just gonna even hit that 1.9, you'll be flatter than that. So that's why we set the city standard at 2.5 on new paved roads. So when you take in the construction tolerance of a project, you might end up with a road that's just a little over 2% when it's all said and done in some spots. If they're trying to match into existing curb, where lots of times we are, or they've got some other obstacles to work around, and utility boxes in the road or manholes and stuff like that. But with this, when you get a shoulder that wide out, shoulder that wide out in this area, we know pretty well, you might start inviting now parking in that area. That's another consideration to think about when we do get that wide. So there's just a lot of pros and cons that go into a lot of these options. So with that, I stand here and give you my recommendation. I would do the 11 foot lanes with the 4 foot shoulder option, maintaining the center crown where it is today, right in the center of the road, maximizing that cross slope at 2.5%. 4 foot is approximately the railing widths that you got on both sides of the room. That would be equal on both sides. And why I give that recommendation to, you know, just knowing that's what experienced bikers and runners do. Bikers are gonna always bike on the side of the road with the traffic. Runners are always gonna run towards traffic. So even if you had that 3 foot or 2 foot shoulder on one side and that really wide shoulder on the other side, they're still gonna use that side regardless. And I think that puts other people in more harm's way, especially if you got 2 trucks coming at each other and you had 2 foot here and you know everything lines up in the perfect storm. You got the biker or the runner over here, you got that family here and 2 trucks trying to get through. Something's gonna give in that situation. And that's why I look at this, and if even you know the experienced users are gonna be pretty sufficient with all the options, but it's that less experienced user that's I'm trying to think about and protecting the most. You know, sometimes if you do give that wider shoulder, they might think they're safe, but in actuality, this is probably not a corridor for a non-experienced user. By providing that width over 4 feet, I think we're starting to invite larger groups to be sharing that side of the road together versus individual or a couple out for a walk, right? So that's how I land on this. I can keep going, or we can just nail this one out right now.
I like it.
Yeah. I think just even for like postal delivery and stuff like that, just to have some extra width for them folks to come out, I think is beneficial. I'd be curious just to see how many of them folks have gotten their cars hit by cars out there on North Shore Trail, because I know that's one of their favorites. They always say, this is the worst area for delivering is North Shore Trail for them.
And maybe I should put that snow plowing comment on, you know, the cons that I had earlier, like, you're like, why would that bother snow plowing? Well, if you have the road offset, right, and they're gonna hit that center line, right, but they might not get enough of the driving lane because you got so much more wire to push on that side, and probably gonna have to take 2 passes to do what they used to be able to do in 1. Obviously, the skinnier side, they're probably going to be able to easily get in 1. So that was kind of some of that comment related to the snowplow situation, where I'm offsetting the road, leaving much wider pavement on one side with the same truck that we're using on the other side of the road, right? But definitely let me know now. Keep discussing, or give me the nod to move on.
Any questions or comments for Ryan on this?
No, as I read through this over the weekend, option 2 seemed to make the most sense to me.
Ryan, in my head, I'm not clear, so I just want to be clear. Are you thinking, or are we talking about this 11-foot lanes and the 4-foot shoulders on the entire road from Greenway to 97?
From
Or are we-
235th to Highway 97.
Okay. Provided, or if we're not doing anything with the first part of the road.
It's my understanding that that portion of the project has been removed. And that's why I did make the first slide of some of those assumptions based off our last meeting.
I think just to be clear, that was the consensus. I don't know that there was a vote, and we
There was,
should probably.
Yeah.
there was no votes.
Yeah, there was no
Included in any
vote.
motion tonight should be either eliminate or don't eliminate that section, but I think that was the general consensus we got from the last meeting.
So that's my point. My understanding was we were just gonna talk about it, and it wasn't removed at this point. And I think we should go back and talk about it as you look at the cost of that Greenway to 235th and the actual feasibility or the actual, I guess, safety and, just, are we really sure we wanna put a trail on that road? I mean, I think it's dangerous. I think there's not enough room. I think there's too many things we have to do to make it work. We can't even tie in the trail system with any of the other trails because none of those neighborhoods are developed yet that are gonna tie the trail system in. So I'm not sure if we should put that on hold or not, or should we just build the road as option 2 is the whole way at this time? I mean, I've talked to a few citizens and none of them are really in favor of it. They're not making an issue out of not having it. And, at the meeting that I attended, there were a few people that talked about it, but it didn't seem like it was an overwhelming yes that we should do it. And it seems like an awful lot of money for the city to pay for something that probably is not really, we're not really ready for it yet. Just my thoughts.
Any additional thoughts on that?
I'd probably agree with Kevin on that. I think the cost of moving utilities, cutting trees, land acquisition and stuff like that, I don't think people really understand the totality of all that's involved in that from Greenway to 235th.
I think that, when we were, at the last meeting, kind of the idea there was that it doesn't hurt to take a pause for 2 years or 3 years on that stretch, knowing we're gonna be back in that area with a larger project on the North Shore Drive piece of it. So do you explore it, find out what those real hard costs are, what it would cost to take land, and again, I agree there's a lot there that has to be done. But this is part of our Parks and Trails comp plan to go out there. So I don't see any harm in hitting the pause on that and really vetting this out to see whether or not we can do this. As I said in the last meeting, we might land right where we were back last May when we made the decision not to do this, or there could be some money grants, something to do something to offset some of this cost. I agree it's a lot, but I think that mile stretch, if we weren't having another large project coming in and couldn't add that to this to this portion, I'd be less willing to put the pause button on this, but I feel it's worth vetting out. Any
I
other
think
thoughts?
I'd prefer to pause too. I know when for the last election cycle, a lot of the comments I received were about connectability within the city. And so I think, even though we don't know the cost, but we would assume that the cost for putting a trail from Greenway to 235th would be a lot. I just think a pause would be beneficial just to see what that would look like and what the scope would be, and then just get the citizens' feedback at that point.
I think the other benefit, if this were to come forward or come through, we would have then potential trail all the way from one of our furthest east parks, which is Cooling Camp, all the way to downtown. Also then connecting to that new Swedish immigrant trail that's gonna run up 8. I think there's some value there for people. And so that was the reasons why I paused. And again, we may and probably most likely will end up exactly where we are tonight, where we're concerned about the cost, but at least we have those hard numbers and we know, like, no, this is a hard no, because we can tell the public it's gonna cost, I think we had gotten an estimate of $6 million to do trail and road from just that 1 mile stretch, right? So it's a lot. But to know the exact numbers and to just have more conversation with the community about that, I think this might be the right time to just.
Mayor, if I could add too, just, I think one of the things that we'd like to do in the pause is explore grant opportunities. We think this trail connection makes a good story for connecting to these other regional trails. Generally, that's what MnDOT and other agencies are looking for when they're looking at grants is there some larger regional benefit? It's not just a local trail connecting to local neighborhoods, it's connecting a park to a regional trail and that kind of thing. So that's another thing we'd prefer to do in the pause. Certainly all good points, valid points about, construction costs generally outpace inflation. 2 years, this is $1 million we're deleting. Will it be $1.2 million 2 years later? Maybe. We're gonna bond for this project though too, and our interest rate's real favorable right now. Maybe not, maybe they'll be down 2 years from now. Maybe they'll be up, who knows? But it's all very difficult to say what's, hindsight's always 20/20, right? But I do think there's an opportunity here to pause and just do a little bit more community engagement. I felt like the tenor at the meeting was all pretty much folks thankful that we're doing something, but also some hesitation like, oh gosh, you mean you're gonna do this and not do a trail? And again, I'd kind of go back to that idea that if we do what the original scope was, that's a 20-year commitment. We're not coming back, no ifs, ands, or buts about it in the next 20 years, just because that would be financial suicide, right? I mean, they're just, now you're stacking $6 million on top of $1 million worth of investment, right? So I think that was the tough part for me to come to grips with that 20 years is a long time. You talked about some of the development to the east not being developed yet. Certainly true. If those developments come in the next 5 years, we're gonna go, yeah, darn it, we should have maybe done this, right? So there's no right or wrong answer, and I don't mean to besmirch anyone's position here, but those are the thought processes that I had.
Yeah, I agree. My original recollection was if we pause it, it would be a longer period of time than a couple years.
Yeah, what is, in the CIP, when is that?
I believe we have it 2028, but it would totally be dependent on when Highway 8 schedule actually occurs, because if we were to have North Shore Drive tore up, not drivable, and Highway 8 tore up, not drivable, that puts a lot of residents and some business owners in not the ideal condition, and it really presents challenges for public safety if we have to. So that's why we were gonna piggyback behind the Highway 8's project, but with their environmental project development, it keeps been pushing the project that they're working through, so they don't have it 100% firmed down yet.
So 2028 comes fast.
Yeah, well, yeah. And our road will hold up,
It'll take probably some, annual patching that Public Works does on your local roadways that's, they're gonna probably find spots they'll have to deal with.
We'll have the other 6 miles of this project, or whatever, that we won't have to patch.
Right.
That'll be,
Right.
Kind of a trade-off too, right?
Yeah.
So.
okay.
So we are looking for a formal motion on this to,
I think it would be appropriate if you wanted to split it up into 2 motions to decide whether or not to include the Greenway to 235th, and then a separate motion on the lane widths. You can
Then
do
I've
that.
got 2 more
Oh.
things to discuss tonight too.
yeah, that's, okay.
So,
Sorry, you have the,
No, it was a nice day, but sun's already set. Come on, we can be here all night now, right? Just kidding. All right, the second consideration was the lane striping. So this type of road, obviously we'll have that fog line, that white fog line on the side of the road, and there's some information in here. I just included why they put it. Typically with our local roadways, it's a 4-inch width. However, with the additional design considerations, we propose to paint it 6 inches, a little wider fog lines, such as the 6 inches are safer than the 4-inch, just because it helps the driver see the lane boundaries and the road alignments, and it'll help, I believe, provide some of that traffic calming as well on top of that. Cost difference between the 4-inch and 6-inch is approximately 50 cents a linear foot, so that's about $25,000 from 235th to Highway 97. It would be painted epoxy, so ideally that would last 5 years, versus if we went out and did latex, you would be back having to keep up with latex every year. Once you put epoxy down, typically you don't put epoxy on top of epoxy, then you come with that latex in the future, just because there's nothing to really hold to, unless you got some really good areas out there still. But original, new pavements, we typically will go stripe epoxy striping, so. This is what I'm referring to, that white line along the road, and recommending to go with a 6-inch solid white fog line. The last design consideration is powered speed limit signs. There is currently one out there right now, about 600 feet east of Greenway, heading westbound. So if you were coming towards Greenway, you will see this sign, and it'll flash at you what your speed is. So obviously, I think these have been that's been successful out there. You know, studies prove they're successful in driving behavior. They are approximately $12,000 to $15,000 with the proposed sign with the base breakoff sign. My recommendation will be 4 of them, 2 eastbound to be added and 2 westbound. We'd work with Public Works on final locations. Just make sure we're not getting in the way of anything from a snow plowing situation or other reasons. So that would be about $60,000 added to the project. And these are what they look like. So recommendation would be to install 4 more of those between 235th and Highway 97, 2 westbound, 2 eastbound. The one on the left is the one that's out there today. The one on the right is actually just installed over in Scandia. So now in conclusion, now we can make some motions or have additional discussions, and I can go back to any slides you want, but scope of work, lane width consideration, lane striping consideration, solar power, speed limit sign consideration are what we're looking for on final direction tonight.
All right, thanks. So we talked through the other 2 things, the lane and potentially the pause, the lane shift, but then the new things here, the lane striping and then the solar powered speed limit signs. Any thoughts on that or questions on those?
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense to have that 6-inch line for the reasons you laid out. And then as far as the solar-powered speed limit signs, I would be in favor of that. I mean, some people may ignore them anyway, but I think it's just another visual reminder that people need to slow down. And so I think it'd be worth the investment.
Can we install cameras on them and issue tickets?
A lot of change with that going on in some places right now. That'll be a legal question.
So in some of the feedback from the neighbors or the people that attended, the concern was the speed based on now you have that basically Oregon Trail road out there that's rough and people, it slows it, it's an automatic, the whole thing's a speed bump. It's about an 8-mile speed bump, and having that nice pavement, it is gonna increase the speeds there. So I think having these solar powered speed limit signs would help at least slow down a little, some of the people.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree, for sure.
Obviously, a little additional money there, but I think it's well worth it. Any other questions or thoughts on the whole project in general?
One last one. Ryan, is the center line made out of the same as the sideline stripes?
The original striping will be double yellow
Okay.
epoxy paint.
Epoxy.
Oh, so 2 different, I guess, recommended is 2 different motions. One would be whether or not we pause on Greenway to 235th, and then the second one would be the lane with considerations, the striping and the solar-powered speed limit. So anyone interested in making a?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we remove from this year's scope of work that section of roadway from Greenway to 235th with the intention of coming back and doing that section with the next sequence project in that area.
A second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So then this next motion, if anyone's willing to make, it would be on, again, the lane striping considerations and the solar-powered speed limit signs.
Go ahead, you got the right.
I'll make a motion that we move forward with the recommended option number 2, which provides for 11-foot drive lane, remain the current crowns, leaving a 4-foot rider ped lane from 235th to Highway 97, also to include the 6-inch lane striping as recommended, and including the 4 solar-powered speed limit signs.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Great, thanks, Ryan. All right, 7C, Lakeside Ice Heaving Project Approval. Dave?
Fix the road, now we'll fix the shoreline. As most of you are aware, the ice heaving that happened along Lakeside Park this winter, I don't know if you've been out there lately, it's come down some, so it's not quite as impressive at all. The frost has come out of the ground, but we did get quotes from a contractor, a local contractor, who can kind of do electric, do the gas, do the grading, do everything, and they actually were the company that originally put Lakeside Park in back in 2005. We used them for an estimate to file a claim with the League of Minnesota Cities. They did approve spending up to, I believe it was $23,100 of that total cost would be covered. We were also going after AIRS coverage for the riprap boulders. What that means is they can be covered, and we're basically saying we didn't know that we didn't have them covered, so we want to see if we can still get coverage, and you'd basically backdate your policy back to September, and you'd have to weigh out what that policy costs versus what the repairs cost. And if the insurance is less, then you would pick up that premium. If it's more, then you would just pay for it out of the hand. It's in underwriting, so we don't have an answer back on that yet. But they approved the contract. They said we could go out and get other bids, but it's competitive with what they review. So if we choose, we can go get additional bids, but they approved Forest Lake Contracting's work at their cost. The big thing here is the sidewalk or that paver path. I said 350 feet. I think that's worst case scenario. It could be shorter than that. It's all gonna depend on once the ground completely settles down and how far we're gonna have to remove back. And there's just some high spots, especially where those light poles are tipped over. That path itself moved over and went up in the air, so there's gonna be some spots. I think, I didn't wanna shock you, but I wanted to say this is the worst case, right? This is if we go all the way back to that perforated drain kind of by the swing set and had to replace all that all the way out to the boat launch. After looking at it and looking at it with the contractor, I don't think we're gonna have to do that much, and maybe half of that. I just don't wanna say we're only gonna do 100 feet and then I have to come back and say, oh, whoops, I missed 200 feet of it. So I'm just kind of telling you this is worst case scenario if it has to go all the way back. So that's, I just went and got those two costs, just trying to see if we could find that cost savings. I assumed that paving it back in would be cheaper, just because I know by having to put it all back by hand, it was gonna cost more, which is true. So it's about half the cost, relatively half the cost to pave it back in. So I'm really kind of looking for discussion on that, or picking an option of what you would like to do with that trail. And if you have any other questions about the bid itself or the process or anything in general about this project.
So I had asked staff, if some of you recall, we do have a shoreline plan there, but really I don't even know if we have any funding for it, and maybe just a little bit of history about that. and maybe some estimated pricing. The idea is that, do we want to make this back to where it was, or do we want to make it so it's usable this summer, potentially do the larger project that is going to happen at some point, you know, supposedly, and how do we think about that, and if we want to wait and just get it so it's flat, and then if that's the case, then maybe it is the bituminous, instead of putting those pavers back down until, and maybe you can save most of those pavers and reinstall them when the final project, when we do a long-term project.
So up on this screen, this is the zoomed in version of the concept that came about, that was last year, correct?
Yeah.
I believe it's on the Capitol, I can't remember which year, you think it's 26?
I do think that we had it capital for 26.
So I'll scroll down, that was just a zoom in the budget, this is what the estimated budget was, if you can, is that big enough?
1.8,
2.3 range.
1.3.
So that was the estimated cost of that picture that you saw. The tricky part is, can't really tell if you're gonna use part of that existing trail. If you're not, it kinda shows maybe in this area that might get used, but then it curves up it. So the concept was, you know, more of a artistic drawing versus construction plan, so it's hard to tell exactly if that paver trail's gonna be salvaged or it's all gonna get torn out anyway. I don't know. It's all gonna go? Okay, so it's all gonna go at that point.
Yeah, because I think over on the left-hand side, you've got all those major boulders or rocks coming in there, and that would definitely overlap where the current trail is.
So was the idea in 26, if this is on the CIP, to fund this through levy dollars? Is that?
I don't know how that was plugged in there.
I don't remember either, and I unfortunately locked myself out of my computer right before the meeting. And so we'd have to double check to see, but something made me think that we did put this in for 26 for the stabilization of the shoreline. Of the almost 4, we did estimate the shoreline stabilization was about 800,000 of that, but that is with that boulder design. As the council may remember, some direction was provided to go and talk with the DNR about that shoreline design. Since the project or the damage that's occurred in the spring, I have chatted with our water coordinator at the DNR about, again, looking at almost like a seawall design, some sort of, pile driving in. They're not favorable to that design. Now, that being said, I have asked the question, is there the opportunity to build a wall and backfill with sand, plant material, vegetation, so you have that natural shoreline appearance? I didn't get a yes, but I got that's a different conversation. And so I think, between now and as our conversations kind of keep going in terms of what do we do here, I think that there's opportunities in the near future to find and settle on a design that works for the city, works for the community, works for the DNR. But those costs are going to be pretty significant. Are they going to come down a ton from 1.4 if we build a seawall? Probably not. But it might come down some if we took out that kind of stacked big boulder design and built a true wall really designed to kind of help prevent that heaving in the future. I will also note, we did talk with Bruce Chamberlain of Talahi, who developed the design. He does not have any concrete examples where the stacked boulder design that was proposed has been utilized. So it would be a test scenario if we ended up going with that design. It looks really cool, but that's not to say that it wouldn't potentially, we're not convinced, we don't have the assurance that it would stop future heaving in the long run.
Would the idea, Dave, on redoing the trail and pushing, we would remove the rock, what we have there, push, flatten it out, and then bring the rock back in place?
It would be resetting, so salvaging all the rocks, so they'd pick them all out and set them on shore. They'd regrade the entire shoreline, lay fabric down, and then reset all the rocks back in how they should be, about 4 feet farther down on the ground and out. So they'd regrade it as the original grading plan was, bring it back to that same shoreline.
So I apologize if I missed that, so I saw the difference on the trail, but what's the total, then what is the total price to do that, plus?
The base bid is $119,000.
It's on page
Is it on there?
106.
$119,965.
And that is including the trail?
That would do
That-
everything minus the trail, so the trail is the one, that would be the allowance or the add-on. And it's just bid at a square footage, so as much as they would take, then that's what you would pay for a square foot. So for reference, that's it's 330, 350 would get you almost back to that swing set. There's a perforated drain towel that comes out right here in the sunk there, and then that's when it all starts kind of getting a little wonky. The salvaging, if you did go with the blacktop trail, they would salvage all the personalized ones. So it's pretty thick between here and the public dock, and then it gets pretty sporadic for the rest of it. There's some on the edges, but that would be part of that deal, that they would make sure they salvage. We could find a different place in the park where we could replace them, maybe the new Veterans Memorial, when that goes up to have the place to add them into. So that if we did go with the blacktop option, that at least those would be salvaged and figured out where to use somewhere else in the park.
Any additional questions or thoughts?
I have a couple. You know, those pavers that are there now, they were donated, funds were donated for those pavers to go in, right, to build that walkway. Is it something that we could go to the community and see if we could do something like that again to repair the shoreline? As an option, maybe we could get citizens to donate again towards that rebuilding. The rocks, what I've learned by my shoreline, which is destroyed again, like a lot of people's, the bigger the rocks, the more damage it causes, and it's harder to fix it. And so most of the people come out and they recommend the smaller stones because they're easier to grade out and replace versus those great big boulders, which they have to bring in heavy equipment every time to fix them. And the big boulders move just as easy as little ones. It doesn't matter how big those rocks are. When that ice is gonna move them, it moves them. And I don't even know if a wall could stop it, to be honest with you. So my recommendation would be not to put in the big boulders, it would be to use smaller ones. And it seems like the DNRs, when I've talked to them, the only thing that really helps hold those shorelines in places is plantings, whether it be grasses, whether it be roots, whether it be, anything. But as soon as that's all gone, if there's nothing there other than sand or rocks, it's gonna move. And we could fix it and it's gonna look beautiful, and next year could do it again, no matter what. I mean, I've lived on a lake since 2009, and I fix my shoreline, I think, every year. And now it's pushed up another 4 feet. I mean, I don't know what the secret is, but maybe there's some way we could get the community involved to help repair that instead of just us taking on that whole burden again. The community enjoys that park, the community uses that park. Maybe there's something we can do, just as a thought.
So
Slab rock seemed to work a little better than just a regular round rock.
For
I
sure.
replaced slab with larger slabs at a 45, and it didn't seem to destroy it as bad as some of the area where I had the bigger rocks. So I don't know, as far as like the ice hitting it and riding up more versus just jamming it into the shore and pushing all of it, rocks right into the dirt. So I don't know if
So
that's
does
helpful.
does the bid include adding additional rocks or using the
No.
the existing
So
rocks?
I'm trying to
So-
do this as cheap as possible,
Right.
knowing that in 2026, we're probably removing this and doing something different, so, and I'm also just trying to roll the dice, figuring in 20 years, we never had this happen, and what's the chance we're gonna get it in another, year or two? Typically, we get heaving and Public Works will run their track hoe down there and we'll just reset them. It just is just way above our pay grade because it's heaved up way too much, but we get heaving every year, which we just go and grade and knock down. But I mean, if we switch to different rocks, then we're paying them to get rid of these. We're buying new rocks. We're trying to design how to set them in. I'm trying to fix it, make it a
Yeah.
good park for the summer, but I'm also trying not to break the bank here because I know it's something we didn't plan for and we're just trying to make it look nice, so. that's
Can
what-
we move forward on the contract and maybe just a little bit, we've got a little time here, but a little more conversation around the trail? Do you think that would be possible as to maybe Kevin's idea there of sponsorships, or what the desire of maybe the park boards, now we have in place what their desire is, or maybe those pavers can all be reclaimed and be part of the Veterans Memorial, not just the signature ones, but all of it, or a big portion of it. I mean, it is a nice look, it's a nicer trail, but I do know, there's constantly weeds in there, and it's additional work for Public Works too, to have those pavers there.
Yes, I mean, given the time frame and knowing that we want to have the park available for the summer, it's a heavily used park. My preference, knowing that we've got a bigger vision for this space, would be to just move forward with the less expensive trail option. Approve the contract so that that place gets put back together. And then, to your point, as we move into that next phase, maybe there's an opportunity there. Because the last thing I'd want to do is go to the public and say, hey, help us fix this, and then 3 years later be like, guess we're going to rip it all apart. That's not a very good look. But I think there's a real opportunity that people, probably would enjoy being a part of that.
I agree.
So the earliest work can get done there would be the 24th of March because we're waiting on the DNR permit and they're sending out notice of decisions to all the watersheds and all the TEP panel basically for review. So we could bring, if you want to sit on it and think about it, we can wait till the 24th to give direction at least on that piece. Or if we want to make a decision now, then we can get them lined up. I even spec this in with sod, knowing that same thing about a heavily used park because I don't think we have time for seed to establish. We need to get sod in there and get it growing and for people running on it. Otherwise, that will be shut down all summer long to try to get grass to grow. It's kind of we got to get it fixed and we got to make it so people can use it too, and trying to do it as cheap and quick as possible.
Yeah, Councilmember Erickson brings up a good point there. I think I would be fine with that. It would be nice though for those ones that are memorialized, or to at least have a location somewhere for them this year. Maybe it's all together where there's a cutout where the sod is or something, and people paid money for those and they like to go down the park, and you never know, that family might not be in town for another couple of years, and all of a sudden they come down there and they're not seeing that loved one in the park. That wouldn't be a good look either. So, we need a motion then, correct?
Correct, yep.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to approve the Lakeside Park repairs with Foresight Contracting to include base bid allowances in option number 2, to remove the pavers and replace with the 10-foot bituminous trail at a cost of approximately $45,000. And I'll also add to that with the intention of having those customized or private pavers relocated somewhere in the park.
I'll second.
First and a second, any additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Right, 7D, proposed lease for 8th District Congressional Office at City Hall. Amanda?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor, Council. If you recall, I believe it was at the last, maybe 2 meetings ago, we discussed Councilmember Stauber's office reaching out to the mayor and inquiring about possibly renting some space at City Hall for a district office. Since that time, I have met with two representatives from Councilmember Staber's office. One is in the audience tonight, Ben De La Forest, and I'll let him get up and speak here in a second if he'd like. No pressure either way. And they looked at the place upstairs, the Shields Lake conference room. It is very minimally used currently and would be a great fit for what they're looking for. They were very excited about what we had to offer here. I have a lease in the packet for your consideration. I'm waiting to hear back from Councilmember Staber's office, specifically the Office of Administration for Congress needs to approve the lease, and that has not come back yet. Key terms of this lease are that it would be starting potentially tomorrow if we can hear back from their office that quickly. It does, as I mentioned before, the lease does need to end at the end of this term for the Congress, so that would be January 2nd of 2027. Any future congressman or congresswoman in that chair would have the opportunity to also rent this space from us, irregardless of party. This is not a political thing. This is not a campaign office. This is strictly a district office, provided that that space was still available. The monthly rent is right now proposed to be $1 a month, and that is because the county assessor, I spoke with the county assessor, and they said that in order to protect our tax exempt status, we can either charge no rent or de minimis rent. After speaking with a representative from the congressman's office, he thought that we needed to have $1 in there at least, so that's where that amount came from. And then we also needed to provide them with password protected Wi-Fi, which we do have, and we'll turn over that password to them once the lease is approved, assuming the lease is approved. The Congress staff member would not have access to any of the secured locations within the City Hall. It would just be access to the front door, the public spaces, and then also to Shields Lake conference room. That would be turned into their office if they want to move different furniture into there or rearrange the furniture currently in there, which is a conference table. They could do so. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to tell you. I think that's it. Just a reminder of the benefits for why the city was considering to do this. It's probably pretty obvious, but having access to a representative of the congressman here within the city hall is great for the people who live here because they'll be able to hold meetings with individuals in the city very easily and the surrounding area. In addition, just exposure. Obviously, again, tonight, Mr. De La Forest was here, so he could hear some of the issues that are facing, the city is facing, and just having that sort of front connection, I think, is very, frankly, almost priceless to the city. I don't know how you quite put a value on that. So those are the reasons that the city was considering it to begin with, and those continue to be the reasons to do so. I am available for questions. If Ben wants to get up and say a few words and introduce himself, I think that would be great, and then I can kind of direct you on the motion because I am asking you to approve the lease subject to minor modification as approved by myself, just so that way if the district office, the administrative office comes back with some sort of a tweak that they need to the lease, we can just do that administratively and get that going.
Great. So before I will have you come on, just before you that though, any questions the council has additionally? So, Mr. De La Forest, welcome.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Congress members. Hello, my name is Ben De La Forest. So my first day with Congressman Staber was today. So I'm very happy to be working with the congressman in the 8th Congressional District for Minnesota, the largest in Minnesota, and more than happy to be in Forest Lake. My official job title is the Southern Field Representative for Congressman Staber. So I run the 6 southern counties within the 8th District. But obviously, we want to have more emphasis where most of the people are within this area, and that's right in Forest Lake. My job is constituent services, as well as federal questions that constituents may have, along with our stakeholders in the area. So again, like Amanda was saying, there's no campaign side to this. This is purely constituent services and helping out the people within the area however we can do so.
Great. Any questions for Ben?
Thank you, Ben.
We appreciate it, and it's great to meet you, and hope to see your face around quite a bit at City Hall. So,
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys ever have any questions, I can leave you my phone number as well as my email. I will be more than happy to be available to you all. So it was really great to meet you guys. Happy to be here and happy to be part of everything. So thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. I guess I just have one question, and maybe this is for Jolene. Just based on, I think we do voting up there. There's an election. That's where the voting takes place in that room. Is there any issues there? Would they have to vacate, even though it's not an election, an office? Any concerns there?
I think we'll have to kind of play that by ear as we're approaching our next election, and I can work closely with Ben on that. If there's concerns from the election judges that they might need access to that room, or it just might be, congestion issue, we can work with Ben and maybe switch his office hours for that day, and perhaps he doesn't even hold office hours on election days, so that's kind of frequent in some political subdivisions, so.
Any other questions or thoughts or comments? Again, and Amanda alluded to this really is nonpartisan. This would be open to any, regardless of Democrat, Republican, Independent, we would offer this space. And so I welcome it, and I think it's going to be great for the city and the residents. And so I would move that we approve the proposed lease for the 8th District Congressional Office at City Hall. Can I get a second?
Second.
You want to amend that to include it being subject to minor modifications as approved by the city attorney?
Yes, friendly amendment. Okay. All right, is there a second then? You second it. All right, any discussion?
Just quick discussion point. We had looked at other leases, and on some of those leases, Amanda, they showed compensation that was greater than $1. And so I guess I'm taken back a little bit that, some of those numbers showed as much as $2,500 a month, and now we're talking about $1.
There was one for, I think it was $2,300 for the
23.
year.
Oh, okay.
And then one was, I think, $500 a month.
Oh,
Was the
500,
other
yeah.
one. And yes, I don't have a good answer for why those cities did that, other than I'm guessing they didn't call their assessor and the county assessor, and I'm also not sure how they would have reported it on their taxes in terms of, or just how they would have reported that with the county. Perhaps, from a full transparency perspective, I think it was important to reach out to the county and confirm, because what would be frankly horrible is if they found out the backdoor way and then they try to take our tax exempt status, and then that's a pretty nasty fight.
Makes sense.
Great. Okay, so we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are, so this is the additional item, the resolution for support of the County Road 32 Forest Road realignment. Mark?
Very happy to have Ben in the audience for this one. This is great.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Mayor and Council, what's in front of you tonight is a resolution of support that may look familiar to some of you. It was in front of you about a year ago this time. We just received notice from the Congressman's office that the quote-unquote window for this congressionally directed spending is opened very recently, and it will close, I believe, on Wednesday or Thursday of this week. And so there was a request as to whether or not we wanted to continue our ask here on this particular project. And working with the county folks on this one, they asked if we could get a resolution of support and a letter of support, and just so happened we had a council meeting tonight, so I don't like to put items on the agenda and surprise you with them. That's certainly not my modus operandi, but given the schedule and given the dollar amounts here we're talking about, it felt appropriate to put this in front of you tonight. So just to review the project here, this is County 32, Ryan, from Highway 61 west to, what's the western limit?
Not quite all the way to Eureka, but in between Eureka and 12th.
Okay, Okay.
12th Street Southwest.
And then, regardless of the realignment of Forest Road, the city would have a share in this project. I believe it was estimated around 1.8 to
1.9 million, and that does not include right-of-way acquisition, engineering, construction administration, inflation, and we will have some city sanitary and water work, and if we want to do lighting again, that'll be another conversation we need to have.
So there's a $2-ish million project cost here regardless of any realignment of Forest Road, and having that realignment of Forest Road, when that was discussed at several public meetings, I believe there was 5 public meetings held, so there's a lot of community input here. And the result of that community input was that the public favored this sort of realignment to shift Forest Road's intersection over a block essentially, and which eliminates the need for a right-in, right-out restriction on that intersection. And that action and the hardship that involves for the city kind of prompted this idea to go seek funding elsewhere, because the city just doesn't have that kind of funding in our pocket at the moment. So that was the ask from last year, was to request that funding from the federal government to assist with the city's share of that project. Overall, the total project cost for the city would come down with that appropriation. And so staff's recommendation is to continue this ask in 2025, and again to fund the city's portion of the realignment of Forest Road. So I don't know if Ryan, if you have any other comments on the project as a whole, or?
So the county is gonna match their previous ask, which was 9 million. That would go towards Forest Road construction and right-of-way, and then the remaining funds would be taken off the top of the whole entire project. So in essence, that would buy down our local share of the numbers I just shared with you.
And so, Mr. Mayor and Council, what we would be asking for you tonight is to approve the resolution in front of you and authorize the letter of support that's been drafted, the draft letter for you. If you have, of course, amendments to that resolution or to the draft letter, we would certainly take those, but otherwise it's, I think, Jolene, just identical to last year's with updating the dates. And
Correct.
Okay, thanks. Do we have, we were told in the past that we would learn the outcome of this in March, and here it is March. So this additional ask, does that back up, and should we hear relatively soon if these funds are gonna be available, or any idea there?
Yeah, so the conversation started, I reached out to the county if we could set up some separate time to bring Administrator Statz up to speed on this project, and then we got this email today. They just found out Friday that Starbucks is looking to reopen the congressionally directed spending portal for new submittals. So now we're resubmitting. I don't know what that entirely means. If our old one is not valid anymore, we need to resubmit it to make it current. But they needed an updated letter of supports they requested one from the city and one from the chamber, and then the resolution of support too. So that's where we're at. This all just has happened in the last, since this morning for us.
Any other questions or discussion on this, or thoughts?
Support.
Anyone willing to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 03102502, a resolution of support requesting congressionally directed spending funds for Washington County's County State Aid Highway 32 pedestrian and safety improvement project, along with the letter of support.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are at staff updates, and we'll start with Jolene.
No updates this evening, Mayor.
Abby?
I just have a couple for you. Included on the dais tonight is an EDA 2024 annual report. I don't think that that's necessarily something that had been being reported back to the council, certainly not in maybe kind of the format that it is, but a new thing, so take a look at that. really highlights not only the EDA's activities, but just in general, some of the development that happened in Forest Lake in 2025. Plan on updating that annually, so you start to see those trends, and always just kind of upward, I think. Are trying to schedule a joint workshop between the EDA and the City Council for the first week in April, or just the first part of April. I recognize I should have given you a heads up to bring your calendars with you. I did hear from the EDA that there are 2 dates that work better, Monday, April 7th or Thursday, April 10th, but we do acknowledge that there is a conflict of interest with the Thursday night meetings in our local Lions Club. So I guess if folks have their calendars available, I'm just wondering if you've got some availability or know your availability Monday, April 7th or Thursday, April 10th. Looks like Jeff is
I'm
open
open on
both
the,
days.
I'm open on the 7th.
Hannah, you want to get back to me?
I'm most likely open. Usually I
Okay.
keep my Mondays open.
So maybe what we'd probably do is just set it right now tentatively for the 7th. I'll send out a calendar invite for everyone. Sounds like there's a majority of the council, a majority of the EDA that's available that night. Time TBD, but the goal of that joint workshop is really to discuss some higher level items, specifically related to Headwaters 123, but then in general, EDA work plan and kind of where the body's gonna kind of be going in the next maybe 18 to 36 months.
That's great.
That's all I got. Thank you.
Dave, anything else for us tonight?
Tomorrow is the Public Works Facility Space Needs Study Tours, so we'll be looking at City of Ramsey and the City of Hugo Public Works Facilities tomorrow. Councils that attending meet here at 12:15 at the City Center, and we will go from there. Second issue item is Parks and Rec Commission is meeting for the first time next week, first time in a long time, so Kyle's been putting a lot of topics together. He's raring to go. He wanted to see if we could go till midnight the first night. Told him to calm her down. Let's just get him into some introductions and wait for at least the second meeting. So he's excited. It'll be good to have a group together. There's a lot of development, a lot of policy work, a lot of stuff that has kind of been shelved for a while. So we'll be catching up and putting some time in. That's it.
Great. Ryan, anything for us tonight?
Mayor, City Council, just a few things to update. Last Tuesday, public open house for a pre-construction meeting was held for Broadway by the Washington County. I think 3 residents showed up for that meeting, so not obviously the turnout they wanted, but they are gonna still plan on going door to door to all the businesses there, just to have that one-on-one connection. I think they anticipated, depending on weather does and everything, but construction started in April and they plan to be done June 15th or second week in June. With that project, so that'll give us plenty of time before 4th of July. This Thursday is the Bells Park bid opening, and then tomorrow nights, we have the MnDOT Highway 97 Public Open House, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. upstairs in the community center. So that'll be interesting to see the turnout for that. It's been a little while since they've had a public meeting, but it'll definitely generate a lot of questions with that project, but hopefully people that do come have been to the several open houses that we've had over the years, so with that one. And I think you all seen that aerial flyover computer generated project, right? So that was good tool that MnDOT put together too. That's all I got.
So when is the projected start again? Is that May, or I guess the bigger question, when would that be completely shut down? Would the project on Broadway be done before they're completely shut that, or do we not know that?
Last I heard, they plan on doing lane closures the beginning of June with Highway 97, so there would be at least a week overlap, if not 2 with the construction projects, but at that stage, that would be the final stage. Washington County would be with Broadway, so it would be open to traffic both lanes. It might be restricted lane, but traffic both lanes would be open by June already.
Amanda, anything else for us tonight?
No updates.
And Mark, anything?
Just a couple of things. This week, we are interviewing for a couple open positions, one at the Public Works Department and one in our Building Department. And then next agenda for our work session, we're going to try to bring a staffing discussion back to you about some of the department head positions that are open and have a little bit better picture for you where we're heading in that direction and in that regard to overall staffing. So we're eager to get that moving and get some of those positions filled that have been vacant for a bit of a time here. I also want to just report that we had a very nice meeting with AFSCME, the union for our folks in various places in our organization here, and I think we have a tentative agreement worked out with them. And MAPE, the union, will be negotiating with them this Wednesday and are hoping again for a similar outcome and hope that we can bring those agreements back to you soon to get, you know, it is March now, it's time to get those agreements wrapped up, right? So we're eager to do that. So that's all I have for now.
Great. Kevin, you have anything for us?
Nothing for me, nope.
Just want to update, talking to Kyle, since he's so eager about the Parks and Rec Commission, which is exciting. Him and I have been in talks just about the policies, because that's one of his big to-dos, is working on policies and drafting them and going over them during the commission meetings. And so he came to me asking about anything that we've heard from council, from community members. And I told him that I would relay that message to all of you. And so that if you guys have anything that comes to your mind that the community has brought to your attention, feel free to reach out to Kyle, because he's just going to town on policies and creating policies. And I know he already has 2 drafted, and I'm sure he has a bank of some that he's going to draft. So yeah, just let him know.
That's great.
And that's it.
Anything? Blake, for you?
Nothing this evening.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
All right. I don't have anything either. This is the end of the regular scheduled meeting. We are going to close session. Does anyone want to make that motion to go into closed session?
Mr. Mayor, just as a matter of order, just to be clear that this is not we're not closing the regular meeting. We are recessing the regular meeting, and then we will adjourn the meeting after the closed session, just to be clear about that.
Yep, thank you.
I'll move to close the meeting pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05 subdivision 3C3 to develop or consider offers or counteroffers for the purchase or sale of real or personal property identified as Lot 1, Block 2, Deponti First Addition, and Lot 1, Block 1, Deponti Third Addition, Washington County, Minnesota. Closed session will be held in the Forest Lake Conference Room and will commence immediately. Once the closed session is completed, the City Council will reconvene the open meeting portion in council chambers. Once back in session, the council will adjourn the regularly scheduled council meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We're in closed session.